In a way, it would be appropriate to say that the last decade has been a decade of political crisis in this country. It is in this context that I discuss the role of the legislature, the Senate in particular, in our democracy. The presidential form of government is a form of government that we have adopted from the Americans. The idea that a government must have built-in checks and balances was articulated first by James Madison, who became President of the United States, in a series of articles and discourses which are now known as the Federalist Papers. It was Madison's attempt at explaining the need for an accountable government and a government that must be safeguarded, or that safeguards must be placed against abuses and excess. The idea of government possessing all the powers necessary to run a nation had with it the inherent potential of abuse. Makapangyarihan, that the people would surrender all their powers to a single government required that government be made accountable for its official acts, and that in order for there to be safeguards against abuse of power or corruption by high political office, that government must be structured in a manner that certain branches act as a check on other branches. Hence the idea of creating separate branches, so that governmental power is not concentrated in one single entity, that it is diffused to three equal powers that provide systems of checks and balances on each of the branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. Thus, the principle of co-equal branches came to fore. It is this presidential system of governance that characterizes our own constitutional democracy. It must therefore be pointed out that the role of the legislature in a democracy can be separated into two primary roles. Firstly, of course, is the police power, or the power to enact laws that will promote the general welfare of the people. And secondly, as earlier mentioned, as a co-equal, to act as a check and balance on other branches. Hence, acting as a check and a balance on other branches of government, I am proud to say, at least in the past 4 or 5 years, that the Senate has taken on the task of remaining independent, of remaining vigilant, and remaining perhaps only one of 2 or 3 remaining institutions that can stand up to the abuses and excesses of Malacañan effectively. We are not grandstanding. We are acting as a check and balance. And allow me to show why we are not grandstanding. Perhaps some are individually, but collectively, our record will show. In the 13th Congress, we stood up as the Senate as an institution, opposed several unconstitutional and illegal acts of the executive department. We stood up against EO 464. We stood up against Proclamation 1017. We stood up against Calibrated People's Response. We stood up against the illegal People's Initiative. And in all these instances, the Supreme Court upheld the position of the Senate. The Supreme Court does not engage in grandstanding. It looks at the issues squarely. It faces the issues, weighs things, and decides. And in these instances, repeatedly, the Supreme Court found this executive department, found the president, found the executive department in excess, in violation of the Constitution. That is precisely why you need an independent Senate to check on the wayward acts of this administration. And in the 14th Congress, we had, among others, the investigation, because we are only in our 7th month in the 14th Congress, of course, the ZTE-NBN scandal. 5 times in the last 13th and 14th Congress, the Supreme Court upheld in landmark decisions the position of the Senate that was in conflict with Malacañan. And 5 times in that period, Malacañan had been found as violating our Constitution.